على نبينا وحبيبنا وقرة أعيننا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. I think roughly 6 or 7 years ago, I can't remember anymore. The first time I did it, the first time I did it in Westmount. That's 2019. Yeah, so this is our 6th year of doing it. And I run these 7-episode series. I can't find a better time. The only time I take off in Ramadan is the last 10 nights, so I run it after also during these last 10 nights, even though it's not the best time in terms of fatigue and how well you're feeling. It's probably better off to be run at the beginning of the month. But the point of them usually is to summarize a topic or a series of topics that I think that I really can't find a better setting to talk about them within. And this year, the title of the series, last year we talked about reduced concepts, and the year before that we talked about the fellowship of the Prophet ﷺ, and you'll find them online. There's a bunch of different series. And this year is pointing out the obvious. And to premise this series for you, these 7 episodes or 7 sessions, I find that there's a little bit of a discrepancy between what was clear and obvious to the Prophet ﷺ and his companions and what is clear and obvious to us. And that a lot of the conceptual aspects of Islam that we take a long time to arrive at, meaning we only conclude or come to realization of after maybe years of study, or after maybe attending khutab and durus for a long period of time, that to the Sahaba and to the Prophet ﷺ were just, that was the norm. Like that, they didn't need to conclude these things. It was just, that was obvious. What I imagine in my mind is that if you learn the things that you would, let's say you attend all 7 episodes, let's just say that you do. You won't, but for the sake of argument, let's say you attend all 7 sessions. And you make some realizations within those sessions. If you were to meet one of those Sahaba back in the day and say, oh, we attended this series and we learned this, they would look at you and say, well, isn't that obvious? You needed someone to tell you that? That was if you knew anything about Islam at all, if you ever spent any time with the Prophet ﷺ or read the Quran in any degree of depth, then that would be obvious to you. And I feel like we've lost touch with that. A lot of aspects of Islam that are honestly very simple and very obvious. And we get caught up with details, peripheral details, that really have nothing to do with the essence of the message itself. And this is not a phenomenon that only occurred to Islam. This has occurred to every ideology, way of life, and religion throughout history. Even if you talk about the Western civilization, built on a number of important concepts, like freedom, for example, and whatnot. And this series, people, over time, they lose connection to the values that allowed them to exist in the first place, right? This happens everywhere. That's why the Western civilization now is struggling from a value, from a principle perspective. Because what they used to build their civilization, the values that they depended upon, they're not connected to those values anymore. They're connected to morphed, mutated versions of those values that don't really mirror or are almost unrecognizable if you are to compare them to what the actual value was. When they came here, they spoke of freedom, and they actually believed in the freedom of the individual, not to live under tyranny, not to live under oppression and transgression, which is a beautiful thing, by the way, we all agree to. It turned into your right to own a gun and to offend God openly and walk around naked. That's what freedom is. I get to do these 3 things, and that's it. And that is really not the essence of what this freedom was about. That's not what this freedom was built to achieve. But they lost that connection, and that's the norm. That's the norm over 100 years, 200 years, 300 years. Which is why the Prophet ﷺ would say, "يأتي على رأس كل مئة عام من يجدد لهذه الأمة أمر دينها." That every 100 years, Allah Subhanahu wa Taala will send scholars who will reset the timer, will reset the mentality, the mindset, and get people to see Islam for what it is again. And I feel like we're coming close to that 100-year mark. The last time someone had done this has been 80, 85 years since we had a mujaddid, someone who came and really brought things back again. And it's not just one person, it'll be different people in different parts of the world who will do this. And I feel like we have to go back and refocus on the simple parts of our deen. Because the simple parts of our deen actually are extremely profound and very beautiful and very meaningful. And within this series, what I'm going to try and do is point out to you what I believe to be the obvious. what should not require a lot of argument, debate, or repetition of reminders. This comes naturally with accepting La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, and sometimes even just what should come naturally to us as human beings. So that, without further ado, and I'll try to keep this less than an hour, inshallah ta'ala. That's what I say every year, and I never do it, but I'll try, inshallah, this year to keep it that way. The first episode we're going to talk about, is this working? Perfect. We're going to talk about the concept of al-qiyam, or what you can translate into taking a stand. And this word in the Quran, the word qiyam, is a word that identified, that was iconic to a generation. It was iconic to the Sahaba and the way they understood Islam and the way they practiced their deen. Because the word in Islam, or in Arabic, sorry, sometimes can be used to talk about posture. You can sometimes say this is qu'ud, and if I were to stand up, then that would be qiyam. You can use it that way, but that is not the appropriate or correct or literal use for it. Literally, if I'm going to use, this is julus, not qu'ud. And if I were to stand up, that is wuquf, not qiyam. That's the literal words. But we use the figurative meanings of these words often. And sometimes the figurative meaning ends up beating the literal meaning, and we lose sense of what the literal meaning is. So the word qiyam started to be understood as standing up. But really it's to take a stand, which is a very different thing. Which is a very, very different thing. Posture has nothing to do with this concept altogether. And I want to share, at the beginning of each session, I'll share a sentence, or a series of sentences, a small paragraph. Something that I want you to read and think about. And it will start with the same way every time. Obviously, we are expected to commit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's teachings 100%. That is obvious. It's obvious that we are going to advocate for His cause subhanahu wa ta'ala at all times with all of our might. We're going to dedicate our lives and wealth striving to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in His way, and sacrifice all that we have to fulfill our serviceship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is obvious. Once you gave your shahadat al-tawheed, once you said with your finger up and you said la ilaha illallah, this comes with the deal. Obviously you're going to be offering it everything you've got. Obviously you're going to commit every atom that makes you towards achieving this. This is not something that should require like a series of khutbahs or an imam to spend the entirety of his life telling people that this is what you should do. This came naturally. No one entered Islam with the Prophet ﷺ the way we are Muslims today. No one, not one person gave the Prophet ﷺ shahadat al-tawheed and then lived the way we're living today, except one group. And I'm not going to call out their names because I fear that the label ends up hitting me and hitting you. So I'm going to leave it aside for your own imagination to imagine. Aside from that, anyone who gave the Prophet ﷺ shahadat al-tawheed came in full force, offered their full lives to it. They stood there, what? Command us, Ya Rasulullah. Command us regarding our lives and our wealth and our families and our homes and our status. What do you want us to do? And then the Prophet ﷺ taught them. And that's why once he put his head down ﷺ and passed away, when his time came, Islam did not fizzle out. Islam didn't, the opposite happened. Islam, instead of struggling to exist, as almost every ideology would, every ideology, once the leader disappears, struggles to exist. Even Christianity, like Christianity, specifically Christianity, it struggled for many centuries. It was only until a political figure accepted Christianity that it became popular. And then when he accepted Christianity, he didn't keep it in its original form. He brought into it the paganism culture that existed at the time and then spread it, which is what we have today, whether it's Catholicism or whether you're talking about Protestantism. It doesn't make a difference. It's all the same. Like it all came from the same background. But when you look at Islam, you look at the Prophet ﷺ, he passed away in the 11th year of Hijrah. And then you should just fast forward until the 61st year of Hijrah. So just 50 years later. And Islam was in all three continents. And it was the largest empire that had been seen on planet Earth since the beginning. Not before or after do I believe that there's been an empire that has been as big as the Muslim empire, that's covered as much land and as many people all at once, and as diverse as they were. And you may find empires that were large, but they only covered a specific place with a specific race of people. But Muslims, no. You were going from Andalusia to the northern part of Africa, to all of the Middle East, to the Eastern Europe and Western Asia, down right into India and Pakistan and Afghanistan in Mongolia today. How did this all happen? Well, there were certain things that the Muslims understood very obviously. And the moment you accepted Islam, it's just you adopted these concepts. You adopted these clarities. And one of these main clarities is the concept of Qiyam. That the moment you accept Islam, you are committing your full self to it. It's not a part-time membership. It's not something that you can afford to only give your time or your wealth to when you have extra of it. If you're only offering it when you have something extra, it means that there's another priority or another list of priorities that come first. You take care of those first, and whatever is extra or added, whatever you have in addition, you'll offer to this. No, that's not how Islam is understood. And you can't, and accepting Islam that way is not appropriate, and it's not acceptable. And that's not what he called for, alayhi salatu wasalam, nor was that what the Sahaba learned. No. It was obvious to them that they were going to commit themselves 100% to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's teachings, 100%, everything that made them human beings. So what does the word Qiyam mean? So there are 4 translations for it that I think are appropriate, and this is taken from the books taken from an Arabic mu'jam. So if you go to an Arabic dictionary and you start breaking down the different usages for all of the derivatives of this word, because qama is the root, and then from it all of the words wa iqam as-salah, qiyaman wa qu'uda. When you look for these derivatives, and all these derivatives are explained within these ma'ajim, and in this the tafasir of the scholars of our early ages, as activism. And activism is a word that has a lot of taboo surrounding it, but it shouldn't, because the meaning for it within English and the meaning that it reflects in Arabic are very authentic. It's where you see yourself as someone who prioritizes a certain cause. That's what an activist is. An activist is someone who prioritizes a cause. That's it. He sees that cause as their priority. That's what they're going to focus. That's what they focus on first. That's what they give their lives and time the most. And they can be annoying if you don't care for that cause. If that cause is not your priority, you'll get frustrated after a while with people who see the world that way, who prioritize a specific cause. For example, environmentalist activists, right? Environmental activists are people who prioritize the cause of environmentalism. And if you don't agree with that, it's not a priority to you, then you get annoyed with that after a while. People continuously barraging you with emails and reminders and stances and do this and don't carry that and don't buy these types of bottles and don't carry this bag and whatever. All these behaviors that they're going to be picky about because they care about the environment. It's just a matter of them prioritizing it. So as a Muslim, what exactly do you prioritize? Like what came natural? Did the Sahaba require the Prophet ﷺ to run a session where he explained to them what their priority list was? Or was it that the moment that they accepted Islam, the moment they gave the bay'ah to the Prophet ﷺ and gave their shahada, that they knew what the priority was going to be? The priority was going to be this faith, this deen, this way of life, this social system, this construct that is designed to allow people to live well and to live to their best potential and to bring peace and to bring prosperity and joy to human beings. This is how they understood their deen, and because they understood it that way, they committed to it in that manner. They didn't commit it. No one commits to something that is only self-serving. People only commit to things that will help humanity. Like, when you think about it, activists don't really exist for personal causes. You don't call that an activist. Someone who is trying to save a loved one from a disease or trying to get someone out of jail, that's really not an activist as much as it's an advocate. Now, someone who's advocating for a specific person, who's an activist who is speaking out for social justice, for example, or against social injustice, or speaking out for the rights of people or animals or the environment or whatever you want. And Islam, by nature, requires you to have qiyam, to have a certain degree of activism, or if you don't like the word, having a cause prioritized. What is the priority for you? There's people who prioritize causes, ways of life, and people who prioritize their personal interests. And Islam teaches you how to balance them. It's not interested in you living a life with no prospect, with no aspirations or ambitions, without enough to feed yourself and your family, without trying to... No, Islam is not interested in any of us being poor and weak and lacking a social life and lacking a family and a spouse and children. No, all of that has to be done, but it is not prioritized above the cause that you are living for. And that is the concept that they understood. Establishing a position. In life, really all that stays after you leave this world is whatever stances or stands you took. What you stood for, what positions you accepted, what you established for yourself in your life. You have to stand for something. Everyone does. I talked about this a few nights ago in the pre-Tarawih session. You will stand for something. You can't avoid it, just like you can't avoid having a religion. People say, oh, I'm anti-religion. You can't, Habibi, you can't. If I ask you about what your understanding of the world is, you have to give me something. Right? Even if you say, I don't know, that's your religion. Your religion is you have these big questions, you're not interested in answering them, you don't care, and you don't want to know so that you can live however you want to live. That's your religion. You chose something. You can't, like certain things you have to choose. Like you're going to be somewhere. You can't, you can't decide that you're not going to be anywhere. You have to be somewhere. So the same thing goes for positions in life. You have to stand for something. You can stand for self-interest. Stand for my hawa, whatever I want, whatever works for me, whatever, I stand for my family's best interest, fine, whatever. But you'll stand for something, and if you don't articulate it, then your deeds will articulate it. Like your actions, your choices will describe it, and that's what Yawm al-Qiyamah is for. Like if Yawm al-Qiyamah, if I ask you what do you stand for and you refuse to answer, I ask you what is your religion, you refuse to answer, no problem. Yawm al-Qiyamah, it will be extracted from the totality of your story. It will be interpreted from the story that you wrote, from the life that you lived. Okay, let's see what you stood for. You don't want to say it. Actually, Yawm al-Qiyamah, even if you said it, it won't matter. Even if you said it, it won't matter. You say, no, I was clear on my stand. My stand was, La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. Good for you, stand aside. Let's see if that's true. You're going to articulate your stand, your position, through the book that you write, through the choices that you make. Articulating it verbally is just to help you. Is just reminding yourself of what you should stand for. And it's attracting people who are like-minded so that you don't stand alone. Because standing alone is hard. If you ever in your life have to take a stand alone, it's very difficult and it's not fun. And the amount of isolation and loneliness that you will experience is actually quite crippling. So the reason that we articulate our stands is so that we attract the people who agree with us, so that we have companionship, so we're not alone, and those who will remind us, and that we use this as a reminder for ourselves. But even if you articulate any stand in this life, only through your actions will Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala validate that what you articulated was true. Only through what you did in your life will Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually accept that you have to prove it. You vocalize the stand, you say you stand for something, that you're an activist for a cause, you prioritize a cause, good for you. Prove it. Otherwise, words are free. It's cheap to say anything. It means nothing. There's a cute story that I always found. There's a poet who came into the vicinity of a king. He came into the balat of the king court. And he started, and he had seen on his way in, he had seen a poet coming out with a lot of money. And he asked him, and he said, Madahtu, I praised the king with my poetry. So he went and he's like, oh, I have an opportunity here. So he puts together a poem. And the poem is extremely exaggerated. Yeah, and you are as beautiful as the sun and as strong as a lion and he's just exaggerating his praise of this king. So as he is going through his qasida, the king says, 10,000 dinar. Allah. So he increases his exaggeration. As he's going along, the king 20,000 dinar. And the guy is losing his mind, and he's adding 4 verses and exaggerating more, 30,000 dinar. And the guy is losing his mind. The court manager comes and whispers to the king, are we actually going to give him this? فقال لا إنما هو رجل سرنا بكلام وسررناه بكلام. He's just a person who made us happy with words, and I made him happy with words. He BS'd me, and I BS'd it. That's what it is. Anything you state, you have to be able to back up. You have to prove it. So when we talk about activism, when we talk about Qiyam, it's a stand that you take. Obviously, you're going to take the stand. Our problem today is that people aren't even taking the stand. Our problem today is we're not even willing to articulate verbally that we prioritize the cause. Forget about actually proving that we do. That's a whole different struggle. That's a lifetime struggle to prove that, no, I prioritize Islam. It comes first. It's before my personal interests. It's before what I think is best for me or my family or it comes. Proving that is going to be the struggle. Articulating is the obvious. Of course you're going to articulate that. We don't even articulate it. We're not even willing to say that out front, that no, this is what I stand for. My life is for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's a degree of dedication, of commitment, And I always refer to this, when we first opened this place, I think within a couple of months we had a town hall or we had a meeting, and we didn't have a lot of questions, but I remember Sheikh Ziyad, hafidhahullah, he's the only person who asked me a question. And he asked me the question, he said, what is the biggest obstacle that you have in what you're running? And I didn't really think of this question before that moment, but I answered him. I told him commitment. It's commitment. And this is just, it just came, it's something that was sitting in my brain that I didn't even know was sitting in my brain so clearly. The problem is commitment. There's no commitment. People will show up for a little bit. They'll float in their floaters. They're floaters. I've been in masajid since I was 5. There are floaters. They'll float in for a while. And they're bobbleheads, just stick around, just float around for a while, and then the tide will pull them out again, and you won't see them for a couple of years, and then they'll come back in again. Rarely does someone come and commit, as in commit their life, and if they are not living there anymore, they go and commit themselves somewhere else, because it's very rare. You don't see it very often. That commitment piece is integral. It's absolutely critical. Nothing works without commitment. Imagine if Abu Bakr needed to take a year off. Imagine if Umar decided, Ya Rasulullah, I need some time for myself. I'm vacationing, inshallah, and I'll be back in a couple of... What are you talking about? This is, we don't accept that. That's hilarious. It's a silly joke. It means nothing. But don't they have the right to do that? Don't they need some time out? Don't we all take time off for ourselves and disappear from masajid and disappear from Islamic work for a while and kind of absolve ourselves or excuse ourselves from doing this because we're busy? Imagine if one of the Sahaba told the Prophet ﷺ this. I need to get married, Ya Rasulullah, and I have to get a career. This is too much work. I'll come back once I'm done my undergrad. I'll come back once I have... That's absolutely worthless to him, ﷺ. Those people's names we don't know. If there are people who did that, we don't have their names. We don't know who they were. They weren't even worthy of being mentioned. Those who are mentioned are those who prioritize the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and those who prioritize the opposite cause. People who prioritize a cause are admirable, regardless of what cause they prioritize. They're admirable because they stood by their stand. It was wrong. It was a bad stand, but they stood by it, and that's why they are famous. And that's why we can study them and learn something from them. Not to do what they did, but to do the opposite, or at least learn from their dedication. Abu Jahl, you have to give it to him. He knew he was full of it, but he stuck to it until he died. And even at the end, he still didn't give up. That's why Fir'aun is frowned upon by dictators. Because he gave up last minute. He said, "Amantu bi annahu la ilaha illa alladhi amanat bi banu Israel." Shame on you. Stick to it till the end. Stick to your cause till the end. What is this? That's why Allah said, no, you don't get to do this at the end. It's not like that. You have to... This clarity of this topic was very obvious. So anyone who came to the Prophet ﷺ and gave his shahada, he knew what he was coming in for. He knew what this meant. She knew what this meant. This was going to be a lifelong commitment. The willingness to sacrifice. The word sacrifice is always connected to somebody slaughtering something, and really put that aside for a little bit. You can do that at Eid al-Adha, inshallah. Sacrifice here is to give up things that you like and you love. Give up the leisure time that you want. Give up sleep, give up wealth, give up leisure, you could give up ease, give up luxury, give up status sometimes. Giving things up that you otherwise have the tools to get and you have the ability to achieve, but you're going to give them up anyways. You're not going to spend as much time at home. You're not going to go on vacation as much. You're not going to enjoy as much wealth, buying things that you like, or traveling, or vacationing, or you're not going to do it while you're sacrificing that because there's something that's more important at hand. I say this all the time. This is the fourth one, in my opinion, is the disease of our society. Specifically our society as Muslims here, because we live amongst people who, that's how they function. I work in a hospital. What do you think the physicians talk about all the time? Where they went and where they're going. That's it. It's just where their last vacation was, where their next vacation was, when they're taking it, how many weeks they're going to be working in the meantime, just so they can get to that. That's the priority of it all. I'm very boring to them. There's not much, I have nothing. Like I took 2 weeks off. Oh, where'd you go? 990 Gainsborough. You should definitely come and see. It's amazing. It's awesome. There's no jacuzzi, but you will find some degree. You'll be able to tan under the windows when the sun's out. It's just a matter of understanding what matters, really, and the willingness to sacrifice things that we love, things that we like, things that we enjoy. You have to be willing to do that. If you're not willing to do that, that means Islam will only exist for you as long as you can afford to, as long as it's convenient, as long as you have just enough empty space to put it in. I am telling you, that won't work. What do I mean by that? Meaning, even if it does function for a while, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will test you. Like he'll make sure there's a conflict between this and between your actual priority, where you have to choose. You have to choose between this or that. And once you choose, you've made it clear your stand. So you can say whatever you want. You can say, I stand for this and I prioritize that. Your choice doesn't, your choice indicates otherwise. It implies otherwise. And of course, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continues to give us chances. So every time we make the mistake, He allows us another chance. Go ahead, here, see if you can maybe get the priorities right this time. And He'll keep on giving you chances, but Allahu Alam, you never know. You never know if this is your last chance to do it. You never know. And sometimes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala take that opportunity away. You find this word in the Quran, يَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا كُونُوا قَوَّامِينَ بِالْقِسْطِ يَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا كُونُوا قَوَّامِينَ لِلَّهِ. Be advocates. Be people who stand by justice, by those who stand by justice for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, qawwameen. And when He gives the example in these verses, He gives examples that are absolutely horrifically difficult. وَلَوْ عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِكُمْ. You are going to be an activist for the truth, for righteousness, for justice, to the point where you're willing to testify against yourself, where you're willing to testify against your father and your mother and your spouse and your children and your relatives, your loved ones. You're willing to testify against them. I ask this question every time I run sessions, and I ask this question. Rarely does anyone say yes. Like when we come down to the nitty-gritty of it to actually ask, would you testify against your mother? No, I would never. It's my mom. Because you have your priorities wrong. Because your priorities are not correct. No, you don't stand for your mother. You stand for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His value system. And His value system dictates that justice comes before everyone. Justice is more important than everyone. So yes, you love your mother, you adore her, you show bir to her, but she does not come above that. Nor does your father, nor does your children, nor does your family. It's admirable in this life to see someone who prioritizes their family. They're activists for their family, right? But what that leads to is that when their families make mistakes, they don't correct them appropriately. When their families do something wrong, they support them when they do something wrong. And that's not how Islam, the Prophet ﷺ said, don't do that. لا تنصر أخاك ظالما إلا بأن ترده عن ظلمه. Right? So you can stand by your brother when he is a zalim, but how? By saying, no, well, he did it, I'm with him till the end. No, I stand by him by holding him back from his dhulm, by stopping him, by working against him. That's how I help him. Not by supporting him and defending him and saying, no, it's okay. No, and then rationalizing his mistake, rationalizing his dhulm. No. This is an important distinction in Islam. If this doesn't exist, then really the Islam does not function appropriately. If you're like, no, I stand by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala until it's my family. When it comes to my family, no. My family is above everyone, and I will support them regardless of whether they are right or they are wrong. No, that doesn't work. Sorry, it's qawwamina lillah. It's qawwamina bil qist. You will stand by the teaching of Allah. You will stand by that which is right, even if that means you have to go against yourself. That's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says. If I were to make that argument, you could probably find a rebuttal. But when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives the example that at one point you may be required to testify against yourself and your loved ones, what are you going to say? Tell him no? Fine. But that's the problem. The problem is that accepting Islam means that there's something that comes above everyone. It's above my wife, it's above my kids, it's above me. It's more important than what I want and what I feel in my own best interest is serving this cause of justice. The story that I like to use for this is the story of the people of the cave. It's not, can you help me? Just press it for, Jazakallah khair. Perfect, thank you. There's a town in Jordan, it's maybe a couple of 35 or 40 kilometers away from Amman. It's called Qaryat al-Rajeh. And this is where it's believed that the people of the cave lived and where they kind of sought refuge. And this picture there is of that small, tiny village, and it reminded me of the village I came from. Very, very simple. People don't even know that that's what they have there. And when you go to the verses in Surah Al-Kahf that we recite every week, and Surah Al-Kahf is referring to this story, and it's a weekly recitation. Really, there's no other story that we have, or a surah that we have, that you're required to recite every week at a certain time, on the day where you are giving the focus upon yourself and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala a little bit more room, Jumu'ah and around Jumu'ah. So you recite this surah, and if you don't, let's say people are we are notoriously known for never finishing anything. So if you start reciting Surah Al-Kahf and like always finish what you're reciting, you'll always get through this part because this is right at the beginning. So just reciting the first 3 pages, you've already got through the part. And the way that the surah begins is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saying, أَمْ حَسِبْتَ أَنَّ أَصْحَابَ الْكَهْفِ وَالرَّقِيمِ كَانُوا مِنْ آيَاتِنَا عَجَبًا. Or did you think? And no one starts a conversation like that. No one, I don't salam alayk and say, or did you, there's always something that was missing. There must be something missing in this conversation that you didn't hear or that I talked to you about earlier. Am hasibta, or did you think, أن أصحاب الكهف والرقيم, that the people of the cave and the raqim, the document, كانوا من آياتنا عجبا, they were some freak of nature sign that we did as a one-time thing. Meaning we did it once and we were never going to do it again. That's how the story begins. And then you hear the story and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shows you what He did for the Ahl al-Kahf. How even though there was maybe 3 or 4 or 5 or 7 young individuals with a dog, and at some point they decided to do something special. And when they did that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put them asleep for 300 years, which is on its own, it's a miraculous event. Not only did He do that, He bent the laws of physics. وَتَرَى الشَّمْسَ إِذَا طَلَعَتْ تَزَاوَرُوا عَنْ كَهْفِهِمْ ذَاتَ الْيَمِينِ وَإِذَا غَرَبَتْ تَقْرِضُهُمْ ذَاتَ الشِّمَالِ وَهُمْ فِي فَجْوَةٍ مِّنْهِ. That the laws of light were bent so that it wouldn't be bothered during their slumber. All of these changes, why? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would teach us a lesson. But He begins the lesson by saying, do you think that I only did that once? You think that this occurrence happened just one time? It's ajaba, it only happened once? No. It's a rhetorical question. No, it's not. I do this all the time. The question is not whether Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will do for us or for others what He did for Ahl al-Kahf. The question is, are there people who are similar to Ahl al-Kahf? So what exactly did they do? So when you recite the ayat at the beginning, وَرَبَطْنَا عَلَى قُلُوبِهِمْ إِذْ قَامُوا فَقَالُوا رَبُّنَا رَبُّ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ لَن نَدْعُوَ مِن دُونِهِ إِلَهًا لَقَدْ قُلْنَا إِذًا شَطَطًا. And then they continue their argument. So what does إِذْ قَامُوا mean? They stood up, but they couldn't do this sitting down on a chair. So if you understand qamu literally, or you understand it figuratively, as in they stood up, then you've butchered the meaning. But even when I say that, even if I were to explain it as they stood up, you immediately understand it figuratively. Like you understand it even in English figuratively, that they took a stand, they stood up for something. إِذْ قَامُوا, when they decided that they were going to take a stand. When this was no longer acceptable, when the status quo was no longer something that they were willing to participate in, contribute to, or sit on the sidelines accepting, watching as their country, as their people were being misguided and misled and ruined, and their prosperity was being taken away and corruption was overcoming the reality of their nation. They weren't willing to do that anymore. And there's only 3 of them. Imagine if you took the smallest number. We don't know how many they were. But let's say, because it's an option in the Quran, that there's 3 of them. 3 youth. إِذْ أَوَى الْفِتْيَةُ إِلَى الْكَهْفِ. See? When he talks about them, he says the word fitya. Fitya means they have to be less than 20. Like you can't use the word fata on a 20-year-old. Really. At that age, they're adults. For the Arab back then, today you can use fitya upon me, really. Like it doesn't, we don't seem to be, we're not maturing. But back then, once they hit 20, they were married and they were, they had their own jobs and they had fought a couple of wars and they had some experiences under their belts and they made their own decisions. So he didn't use the word fata to describe them. Fata not only describes an age group, but also describes a degree of wisdom or experience. It describes people who don't have a lot under their belt yet. They have not seen a lot of life. I mean, they're still kind of new to things, so they're just kind of figuring it out. There were youth, 3 people under the age of 20. They took a stand, though. They took a stand. They prioritized something above themselves and above everything else that mattered to them. This doesn't mean that you ditch everything else. Taking this stand does not mean that you stop caring for your wife and your children and your family. No, it's just you have your priority list straight. I give an analogy or I tell a fictional story every once in a while about this topic. And I say this is what I say. Say that we were very, very fortunate that a man by the name of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam came to us, to this world, and he picked up all of the elements of life and he stacked them nicely into a perfect list. He prioritized, he put them all in place. He put everything in its exact spot and he made a very nice stack. And he explained the stack and he practiced the list and the sequence of that stack and he handed it down to the next generation. They protected that stack with their lives, practicing it and teaching it and keeping those priorities very, very clearly sequenced. And generation after generation, we did that. And at some point, and I don't know when, as it was being picked up by the next generation, someone they slipped or they tripped, they fell and they scatter these priorities. But no one saw them. So they quickly put them back up together. But they had not memorized it. They had forgotten. They were carrying this stack from one generation to the other, but they stopped memorizing it. And it was not, and when it fell, this person thought, oh, I'll just put it back together. So he put it back up together. But he didn't know if it was the right priority. And he kept it for a while, and nothing seems to change. And they hand it down to the next generation. Nothing seems to change. Not knowing that when you ruin the priority list, you don't see the effects within a generation or two. It takes a couple. It takes maybe a couple of 100 years. It takes a couple of 100 years, like the story of Ahl-Kahf, before that it's actually going to come into practice. Like the activation of this stack, of the sequence, does not occur within a lifetime. It takes a little bit longer than that. So the guy who had spilled and scattered the list and put it back together inappropriately, he didn't say anything. He didn't tell anyone that by the way, like it's not right anymore. Because he didn't see anything change. Well, everything seems to be fine. I must have got it right. I must have put it back, and by some coincidence, I got it right. He didn't. And since then, we have been reaping the consequence of this lack of clarity and priorities. And until someone comes back and he restacks it again, as the Prophet ﷺ did, puts everything in its proper place, what matters most, what matters less, what matters the least, what doesn't matter at all. Until we do that, we're going to continue to struggle. Until people come in absolutely uptight about issues of tertiary fiqh, something that scholars over the years have differed upon in the books of fiqh, they've differed upon for centuries. Until we stop doing that, until we stop wasting time and energy, disputing and fighting, getting upset over things that really don't require, we're going to continue to struggle. Every year around this time, we have to listen to the symphony of sightseeing and calculations. And every year, they ask me about these white hairs on my face. Half of them is from this problem. Half of them is having to listen to people complain about this, as if it's something that is central within our faith when it isn't. And why is it that they think it is? It's because someone ruined the stack. Someone made it seem that facial hair and these things are somewhere high on this priority list when they're not, when they need to be taken and put where they belong, nice and low down there. Like after 150 maybe points, you can look into it. And focus on the obvious. The obvious is the moment you accept La ilaha illallah, your life is dedicated towards something. And that's what these guys did. And because they did that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to prove to them and to us that it's not your job to focus on the outcome, your job is to focus on the stand. You take the position, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala yaqdi ma yasha. These three individuals took that stand, and because they did, their kingdom changed. It took 300 years, but it changed. And it makes sense because they brought the raqim. They reprioritized things. They wrote on their document their vision, their mission, what they stood for. And when they wrote it, and it was found by the people who thought they were killed by the king, they took it and they embraced this list, and they taught it to their children. And within a couple of generations, enough of this occurred, and they were able to overthrow the king. Because I always ask the question, did you ever ask yourself this question? Why did they wake up? Why did they wake up? They died 12 hours later. Why did they wake up? The only reason they woke up is because Allah wanted to show them something. You think you couldn't make a difference. You think that your stand had no value? Like, oh, go take a look. I want you to imagine the guy going to buy the sandwiches. إنهم بورقكم هذه إلى المدينة. Take the silver that you have and go buy something for us to eat. وَلْيَتَلَطَّفْ, and be very secretive. We don't want people to find us. They're still living in an era where they were outlawed. They didn't know it was 300 years later. So this guy is going. He's seeing a lot of differences, but he's like, whatever, I need to buy a sandwich. So he goes to buy sandwiches, and he gives the guy this is how I imagine this is occurring. He gives the guy the currency. So the guy who's putting the sandwiches together, he looks at the currency. He says, where do you get this from? This is like, that piece of gold was worth like millions at that time. This is ancient currency that no one has. Where do you get this from? So the young man gets spooked a little bit, right? He doesn't want any attention. Just give me the sandwiches, yahi. Take it. It's like, where do you get this currency from? This is not the currency. No, this is our currency. No, it isn't. And then he shows him his currency, and his face is on his currency. The young guy's face is on the currency. He looks at the currency, that's him. That's him and his friends. He looks at that, like, so he leaves. He doesn't take the food. He runs back. This is something freakish is going on. And he runs by the statue that was made of him and his friends and their dog and the raqim that they had. Looking at it, not able to comprehend what happened. Goes back to his friends and they talk about it. And they realize that they've been asleep for centuries, and that their efforts resulted in the corruption that they wanted to change actually going away. And then they died. That's it. The story was just a reminder. You thought you couldn't make a difference? Here, take a look. So now you understand the beginning of the story. أَمْ حَسِبْتَ أَنَّ أَصْحَابَ الْكَهْفِ وَالرَّقِيمِ كَانُوا مِنْ آيَاتِنَا عَجَبًا. You thought this was a freak of nature, one-time thing? It wasn't. We'll do it again and again and again. But you need people who have their priorities straight. There's something called, so in the Quran there's an assumption. There's an assumption in the Quran of this. The Quran assumes that you understand this, which is why the verses don't talk about this a lot, because they assume that you understand it. That's why the Quran, تُجَاهِدُونَ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ بِأَمْوَالِكُمْ وَأَنفُسِكُم. We're going to strive for the sake of Allah with your wealth and with your lives, with everything that you've got. The Quran continues to repeat this because it's a maxim, it's implied, it's understood that that's where you're going to live your life. وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. The only purpose of your life is to serve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's implied, it's understood. We don't need to explain this in depth. Of course, you said La ilaha illallah. You're going to offer your life to Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. What else did you think you were in this for? ذَلِكَ الدِّينُ الْقَيِّمُ. This is the religion that will grant you a stand. Al-Qayyim will grant you something that you can stand for. You matter to. There's something beyond you that you represent in this life. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم. The word mustaqim comes from the same origin. It's not just straight. It's straight, but it has a purpose to it. It's purposeful. It's not just a straight line, because no one's walking straight. It's a figure of speech. What sirat al-mustaqim that you're walking straight? Well, you can't walk in a zigzag. You can't walk in a... No, it's figure of speech. It's straight in terms of the fact that you prioritize in a straight... You don't play around with them. What comes first always comes first. There's no playing around. I don't find backdoors to change things, to get personal interest in the middle of it. That's how the Prophet ﷺ lived his life. And he is the epitome of this. He is the ultimate example, ﷺ. Want to learn about this? Watch him. Watch how he lives his life. Watch his choices. See how he decided things, ﷺ. What he gave his life to. What he left after he passed away, ﷺ. Examples that I think, I'm just trying to convince you here. Examples, both of these verses are in Surah At-Tawbah. قُلْ إِنْ كَانَ آبَاؤُكُمْ وَأَبْنَاؤُكُمْ وَإِخْوَانُكُمْ. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala counts 8 things that you are obligated to love. But He tells you, if you love these things, أَحَبَّ إِلَيْكُم مِّنَ اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ. If they're more beloved to you than Allah and His Prophet and striving for Him, then wait for destruction. Wait for loss of prosperity and the loss of everything that you have. In the same surah, إِنَّ اللَّهَ اشْتَرَى مِنَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ أَنفُسَهُمْ وَأَمْوَالَهُم. Indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has bought from the believers, it's a transaction. He has bought their lives and their wealth, their possessions. بِأَنَّ لَهُمُ الْجَنَّةِ, and He'll give them Jannah in return. It's not a coincidence that this is in Surah At-Tawbah. Because Surah At-Tawbah is not Tawbah from a specific sin. Tawbah is from a lifestyle. Surah At-Tawbah talks about you repenting from a lifestyle. A lifestyle where there's other priorities that are more important than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Repenting from a way of life where Allah and His Prophet and His deen is not number one on your list, where something else is more important or comes ahead of it. That's what Surah At-Tawbah talks about. That's why it came within the context of the Prophet ﷺ going on Tabuk, right? فَالتَّوْبَةُ كَانَتْ مِنَ التَّخَلُّفِ, from holding back, from not joining him ﷺ. So it was a literal thing, meaning you should have joined him in the battle, but also figuratively in the bigger picture, it's the same thing. How could he be doing something ﷺ and you're sitting here fiddling your thumbs? What are you doing? What are you twiddling your thumbs? Why aren't you with the Prophet ﷺ where he is? Where is he? Go be with him. And if he's not here, where would he be? Go be there. What would he be doing? Go do that. It's not hard to answer those questions. Those questions are simple. Within the context of your life, they're not difficult to know what he would have wanted you to do, ﷺ, what it meant to be someone who stood for something and believed in something. It's to take a stand at the end. This is what we are asked to do within our deen, to take a stand. It's not something simple, but it is something that was obvious. The Muslims stood for something in Arabia. They were anti-paganism, they were anti-shirk, they were anti-corruption, they were anti-racism. They were anti-number of things, and they stood for something. And that's why they were attractive. That's why the Muslim people around wanted to accept Islam, but were scared to do so. The moment they signed the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, If you look at the graph, if you were to take I should make this graph, I talk about it, I never make it. It's not that difficult. It's just a simple graph, how many Muslims there were over time. 100, 300, 400, 500, 600, 700. And then within a year, it went up like this. You went from 1,500 to 15,000. What happened? Oh, they signed a treaty. There was an attractiveness about the deen because people deep inside you want to stand for something. It fulfills you. There's an emptiness, there's a void inside that is only fulfilled with meaning, with living a life that has meaning to it. Living a life for a cause that is bigger than yourself. That's absolutely, it's poetic and it's beautiful and it's what we require as human beings. And so what Islam is offering you. Here, live for something bigger than yourself and don't worry. There's everything in it for you at the end. It's not something in it for you. Everything is in it for you at the end because Jannah is waiting on the other side of it all. The known quote, Plato, the price good men pay for indifference to public affairs is to be ruled by evil men. When you choose not to care, when you choose to have other priorities, then what you end up with is this, which is what we have today. There's something called performative activism. So what is this? Performative activism is where you state that you stand for something, but you just enjoy the reputation, but not the actual work. Where you enjoy the reputation that you stand for something, but not really doing the work for it. Like you're not going to put in the hours. You're just going to, because it brings some degree of status. You would like to be seen as an environmentalist or a social justice activist. It's nice. It brings some degree of admiration and maybe a bit of status. Performative activism is a problem within our deen as well, where we articulate that we stand for something, but not really. But not really. If you really stood for something, it would be obvious. It would be obvious in the time that you dedicated and in the commitment that you showed for it. Research today, and I think sociology is an underrated science, and I don't think we have enough people who study it, unfortunately, in universities, because everyone has to be a doctor and an engineer and a lawyer. But these sciences are actually extremely, extremely meaningful for us as Muslims, because Islam talks about them. And a lot of the research that comes out of these sciences are very they're very revealing for us as Muslims. They help us understand our own book. They help us understand the teachings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. And today it's clear that when you commit fully to a task or a goal, it takes off your cognitive load. It makes your life easier. It simplifies your decision-making process. It helps you focus. The moment you have your priorities straight and you know you're focused on one thing, this is what matters, then your decisions are easier. You're not like, I don't know, do I do this, do I do that? What is your priority? Then it makes your decision-making process easier. You're focused, you're at peace with yourself, and you don't carry a load cognitively all the time, worrying about when you know this comes first. I don't have to think right now anymore about whether I should have done A or B, because I know what's priority to me. And priority is A, so I'm going to do A. And the bricks for B will fall where they may, and I'll figure it out as it comes along, but I won't regret it. What are the hindrances to full commitment or to this concept of Qiyam? That was obviously something that the Sahaba picked up from the Prophet ﷺ and practiced. Number one is fear. We don't like committing to something 100%. We don't like doing that because we fear that we fail, and if we fail, then it shows that we are mediocre, and we are scared from mediocrity. I didn't get to talk about this during the Tazkiyah sessions, but maybe I'll bring it up here. One of the reasons that vanity is a real disease. It really is. And it makes us not commit to things in a really tricky reason. Here's why. Because if you don't put your 100% and then get 60 or 70, right? You're okay with that. Well, I didn't put 100% anyways. I passed. That's all that matters. You don't want to put 100% because you're scared that if you put 100%, you also get a 70 or 60. And that means you're mediocre. And you don't want to know that you're mediocre. You want to believe that you're not. Well, let me pop that bubble for you. You're mediocre. We all are. Everyone sitting here is mediocre. One out of 10 million people are born like Messi. Plays the game, and he just grew up and his foot was just doing the right thing and he was just running. 1 out of 10 million people have that innate talent to do things. Everyone else has to work hard to become good at something. Everyone else. Maybe you can be a little bit susceptible to being good at one thing or bad at the other. You could have a predisposition but really, anyone who is good at something is someone who works really hard. Yes, you're going to put 100% and find out that you're mediocre. Grow up. Deal with it. It's fine. We're all mediocre. Wallahi, I've been doing public speaking for, 25 years now. I'm still mediocre. It's okay. It's okay. As long as you're able to identify that, recognize it, acknowledge it, learn, improve, try harder next time, there's nothing else that you're required to do. You'll get to a point where you're good at something enough to actually help someone else. That's all that matters. But vanity is so powerful that we're not willing to try hard because we don't want to find out about ourselves what we know is true about ourselves. So the fear of committing to Islam 100% is finding out that I commit to 100% and I didn't move the needle. Like I didn't put a dent into the problem. I didn't fix the ummah. Because we're only willing to commit to 100% if we're going to be Salah ad-Din. Through the movie, who is standing there and removing. And no, you're going to put 100% and barely maybe 10 people remember who you are after you die. Maybe you leave a good impact on just a few souls. Maybe not even that, maybe even less than that, but that's okay. It's okay. But that fear is what holds us back. We don't want to put our 100% in. You have to go all in. And it's okay if you don't get resistance. There's resistance of people because you get pushed back against when you stand for something that's going to, you label yourself. It's nice to be colorful. It's nice to be friends with everyone. I don't respect people like that. If I get to know you a little bit and I find that you're trying to make friends with everyone, you want to be on everyone's good side, I stay away. You're of no value to me, really. Tell me what you stand for, even if it's not what I stand for. That's okay. At least I can identify and we can work together. We can figure out, okay, where's the common ground that we have? You stand for this, I stand for something different, but we must have common ground. Now I can talk to you. But when you're just agreeable with everyone, when you're accommodating and you just want to kind of exist peacefully, this is not helpful. It means nothing. It means nothing. That resistance is scary, or you stand for something. This is who I am. For better or for worse. You like it, ahlo sahla. You don't like it, ahlo sahla as well. It doesn't make a difference. This is what I stand for. That requires a certain degree of courage. The cognitive dissonance. When you don't have clarity on why you stand for something. This is a huge topic. Cognitive dissonance is its own struggle. I'm not going to go into depth with it. But when you believe things that are not true, or your belief system and reality aren't aligning, then it's hard to commit to something. I believe that one of the main problems of why people don't commit themselves to the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is they have all these doubts and all of these lack of clarities that they're not willing to address and not willing to learn to actually remove from their minds. So don't live with cognitive dissonance. Deal with it and seek knowledge. I love this quote. I'm done, inshallah. Individual commitment to a group effort, that is what makes a team work. It's what makes a society work, a company work, a civilization work. It's the individual committing fully towards a group effort. And that's what we are doing here. Islam is bigger than me and you and this masjid and this community and this country and this continent and this globe. We're just individuals that are putting in our full effort to help the group achieve something. It's energy that's channeled in a direction. And we know that other Muslims and brothers and sisters elsewhere are also channeling their energy in that direction. And eventually, when enough of us commit, and that energy becomes concentrated enough and powerful enough, it will result in something. It will result in something. You have to believe that because that's the reality of the world. That's how things change. That's how social norms change. That's how we end up moving the needle, is just by a lot of people continuously working towards ongoingly, with no rest, relentlessly towards a goal. Enough of us do that. The amount of energy becomes powerful enough that it shifts things. It shifts things. And we have the reason to do that, and we have the capability, and we have the numbers, and we have the teachings as well. We just need the willingness to do it. So what are the consequences of partial commitment? First of all, you don't benefit on a personal level. Islam does not work. It doesn't work. Islam does not function. I'm telling you. Islam, if you take Islam as a part-time thing, it's not going to work. You're not going to benefit from it. You're going to come and ask, why am I not feeling this? Why am I not feeling that? You're not going to. Your level is too low. You're not going to feel any of these things that you want to feel. You're not going to find Islam benefiting you in any way until you give it your all. You will give the Quran your all for it to give you a little bit. But you have to give it everything that you are in order for you to get a little bit out of it. That little bit will keep you going till the end of time. But you can't imagine that you're going to give Islam 20 or 30 or 50 or 60 or 80 or even 90% and expect to get the return. You won't. Islam doesn't work like that. It's all in or all out. It always has been. And that's the obvious piece that I'm trying to point out to you today. Islam is an all in, all out deal. Either you buy in fully or you don't. I don't get to judge that about you. Let's be very clear. I'm not here to judge you. How much are you in? Oh, 50? You're out. No, that's none of my business. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does. That's not my business. I'm just telling it for your sake, like in terms of your view of yourself, your perspective regarding yourself. Islam is either all in or all out. If you go in part-time, if you go in with partially, you don't get out of it what you want. And you'll be very disappointed at the end of it because you neither lived the life you wanted to live, nor did you live it appropriately to get the outcome, and you got nothing at the end. And those are the people masakeen, because they didn't get anything. Which is why nifaq is talked about in the Quran so much. This is why the worst thing ever. Because this person didn't get anything. He neither got the benefit of being Muslim, nor did he actually live the life of a kafir the way he wanted to live. It's either all in or all out. Failure to function on a community level. Our communities don't function because of this. There's too much dead weight. There's too much dead weight in a community. Too many people who just benefit from the services or take what they want from it and then walk away. We're not going to be able to go very far. One time. Community don't function when the majority of the people in that community don't commit themselves to it. That's why Medina did not have large buildings, did not build castles, but the people that lived in it, they left after he died, alayhi salatu wasalam. It's the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the barakah, is that they left. They couldn't stay there anymore because his memory, alayhi salatu, was so commanding. They couldn't live there anymore. They felt like it was heart-wrenching. So Bilal left, and Ibn Mas'ud left. They left. They didn't want to live in Medina anymore. Only a few people stayed in Medina, by the way, after that. Like there was obviously a number of Sahaba who did, or else, but the majority of the Sahaba who were living in Medina had to leave. They couldn't stand it. But because they left, they went and they educated people all over the world. That's why they went to make it to Kufa, and made it to Sham, and made it to Yemen, and made it to parts of the eastern Arabia, and to Misr. And that's why those Sahaba were able to educate the Tabi'een, which is why Islam spread so quickly. It causes failure to representation. For representation. We have false representation. Sorry. When you commit partially to Islam, you represent it wrong. You represent it wrong. You give the wrong idea to your children. You give the wrong idea to your peers. You give the wrong idea to non-Muslims when you're partially in. When you're partially in, it's a false representation, and that is a sin that you will carry Yawm al-Qiyamah. That's a sin that you will carry. When you're partially in, when you're not giving it your all, when you're not committing to everything that's in it to the best of your ability, then you're representing it inappropriately. And that representation we're accountable for. The final piece here, it facilitates extremism. It facilitates extremism. When you don't commit appropriately, you let someone else who is doing it wrong claim that they are committed to it fully. The reason, if you're standing on the outside of a masjid, like I don't like the people who are up front in the masajid. I don't like the people who are running the masajid. Well, where are you? Why aren't you doing it? You don't like the guy who's standing up front? طيب ما تتفضل انت. Come on in. If you don't like the culture, you don't like the people who are doing it, you don't like the first line of prayer, you're like, the people in the first line aren't very good, they're not good people. Fine. But where are you? Why aren't you up there? Come in there, push on his shoulder a little bit, take the spot. Where are the good people? Where are all the good people on the outside who are looking on the inside and saying, oh, these people aren't very good? But where are you? Why aren't you coming up front and taking the center spot? Why aren't you committing to it? Why are you letting other people do something that you think should be done better? When you decide not to commit to yourself, you let others who maybe don't know what they're doing, or aren't doing it for the right reason, or doing it wrong, take center stage, because there's no one else to do it. We facilitate extremism when we don't commit ourselves to our deen. We facilitate it. We are one of the reasons for it. We are accountable for it. Remember that. You look at extremists and you say, these are all wrong. You know why? You understand why they existed to begin with? It's because the rest of us were sitting around doing nothing. So they didn't know, they did something. It was wrong, but they did something because no one else was taking that position. Think about that, because we complain a lot about extremism in our communities, but we don't fully understand why. It's because where are the people who are going to commit themselves, who aren't going to believe me, a community that is focused, that is committed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there's no room for extremism. There's no room for that narrative. That narrative dies off because people are educated and people are committed and they're doing the work. They come in with their extremist and their fundamentalist thoughts and they don't find space because every silo is filled with someone who is doing the work appropriately with proper knowledge and proper reference and proper support. I'll end with this, inshallah. This is the final slide. Read this. This is important for you. When you commit to Islam, it doesn't mean you're going to be doing everything. It doesn't mean you have to sit in my spot here and teach. No, not everyone's going to do this. Not everyone's life story is going to evolve in a way where they end up sitting in this position. But you will find your space in your deen. Like you'll find where you're going to do your part. You're going to find where your activism and your qiyam is going to manifest, how it's going to manifest, where it's going to be situated within this ummah. You'll find it. And it's going to be based on your personal experiences. Your personal experiences in your life. If you grew up in a broken family, there's your commitment to your ummah. If you grow up in a society and your high school years were filled with haram and problems and then there it is. That's what you're going to do. That's your qiyam. That's your commitment to this ummah. You're going to focus on this problem and fix it. I'm not correcting and fixing every problem. I'm fixing nothing really. It's just one little slither of work, just a little bit of teaching, conceptual education with youth. That's it. Nothing else. We have no room outside of that to do. But that's as far as I go. It's a compartmentalized approach. Figure out where your compartment is. Let your personal experiences guide you. But then when you do that, that's how you're going to commit yourself to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You'll take a stand there. And you'll live your life just working towards that. Some people find it in philanthropism and they go and they dig wells. Some people find it in da'wah. Some people find it in counseling. Some people find it with youth. Some people find it with... Whatever your life experience is will help you with that. And it's almost necessary for your activism that you engage in to be guided by your personal experience. Almost necessary. Allah gives you these experiences in your life, not to punish you, but to give you opportunities. Here, you know something now. Or you were addicted to something. Or you were abused at one point. You understand now how difficult this is. I don't. I don't know what it means to be addicted to a substance. For me to try and, spearhead an effort to help people may not go very well because I don't understand their struggle. I may not be as empathetic. I may not even know what the right... But someone who went through this, that's why the best addiction counselors are people who were previous addicts. It's very well known because they know. They know what it's like, so they know how to help, and they're much more committed to the idea. Let your personal experiences guide you. We'll end with that, inshallah ta'ala. Subhanakallah bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Inshallah, we'll see you tomorrow, bi-idhnillahi ta'ala, after Salat al-Asr.